chairs here.
I was kind of doing the music. Hello. Is this thing on? Okay. So I would like to welcome everybody for joining us this evening. If you are not a member of the Battery, what we do is we have these societies called, they're called societies, right? I am the chair of Perspectives, and Letty here is the chair of Women of the Battery. From a perspective, what we try to do is have conversations that are a little bit challenging or things that you might not normally talk about. And Letty, if you want to talk about women.
I'm Letty Light, also here with my co-chair, Kristen Hayden, for Women of the Battery. And we have our third co-chair, Stacey Crinks, who's not here tonight. But we focus on women of the Battery and women's power, leadership, and influence, and lifting that up and celebrating that, and also having the challenging conversations about how we can advance that and move it forward in today's context.
And so the idea for today's conversation, because we are rounding out the end of Black Futures Month, we thought that we would have a conversation about building Black wealth, specifically when it comes to women. And so I'm going to welcome up to the stage our panelist and our moderator. And I will give a short, ladies, stop talking. I will give a short intro of everybody as they come. So Denise Kadara currently serves on the board of Tulare Basin Wildlife Partners and is the president of Allensworth Progressive Association, a nonprofit organization serving community needs. Felecia Gaston is the CEO of Performing Stars, a nonprofit organization that helps underserved kids in Marin County here in the Bay Area, for those of you on the live stream, and helps them to achieve their potential. And Anasa Troutman, who will be our moderator, is a writer, producer, and CEO founder of The Big We, a high-impact media company, foundation, and investment fund whose storytelling, narrative, and culture ship work is based on the truth that stories are powerful tools to attract audiences, transform communities, and generate sustainable cultural change. Lots to say. So with that being said, we will welcome the panel, and we will see you on the other side. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanim and Letty. Oh, my voice sounds good. I just had throat surgery, so I'm like, sometimes I sound crazy. So, hi, how are y'all? This is a really much more special day than I thought it was going to be. I haven't been in a room with this many people in a long time. And half the people in here I really, really love. And half those people who I really, really love, I've never met in person before today. So I got a lot of first-time hugs in the last hour. It's just nice. And on top of all that, I get to be up here with these two women. I'm not sure if I deserve it, but I'll take it whether I do or not. So I want to talk a little bit about why we're here. As Letty said, we're kind of at the intersection of Black History Month and Women's History Month, which is like my favorite 48 hours of the year, because for obvious reasons. And I think I want to tell you a story, which is Kelsey Breeze. I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and I've lived there for 4 years. And when I first moved to Memphis, I decided to take on a really big project. And I had a lot of people tell me I couldn't do it. And it was because they looked at me and they saw my Blackness and they saw my femaleness and they assumed lack of power, lack of access, lack of ability, lack of acumen. And I knew that wasn't true. But they didn't know that wasn't true. And I had to go on a quest to find other people who knew that wasn't true in order to achieve the things that I wanted. And the thing that really taught me was you can have big ideas and big vision and lots of acumen and lots of like ability and know-how. But if you don't have control over the resources that you need to manifest your visions, and your visions don't really, really matter. And I set off on this quest to try to figure out what it looked like for me as a Black woman to be able to have control and sovereignty over financial and other resources to manifest the things that I knew my community needed for healing and for the future. And we're so lucky, because if we talk about Black women who are building resources for the future of their communities, there's no match for the women who are up here. And so I'm really excited and honored to be with them today, So thank y'all for being here and for trusting me to hold this conversation with you. And I just want to, before we start, just acknowledge all the spirits and entities and people who got us here, our parents, our grandparents, the people whose names we'll never know, our heroes, our musicians, our artists, our leaders, all the folks who made it possible for us to be in the room today. Just want to acknowledge them and tell them that we love them and they're welcome in here. Like, flick the lights, stomp your feet, whatever. Just let us know you're here. It's cool. Don't freak out if that happens, okay, y'all? Don't freak out. So I want to just start by giving you all time to speak because y'all are my teachers and I know nothing without you. So I want to just give you a few minutes each just to introduce yourselves and to tell us about what your work is in the world. Go, you in the middle, girl. Let's go.
Good evening, everyone. It really is a pleasure to be here tonight. And I'm not one much for speaking, but I love what I do and I love serving. And so my story is about Allensworth. Allensworth, California. It's in the Central Valley near between Delano and Tulare, Visalia, in that Central Valley area. And it is an African-American town site that was founded in 1908. It was founded by Colonel Allen Allensworth, who was a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army, a chaplain. When he retired from the military, he was feverishly looking for a place where African Americans could be free and live independently. And this is back in 1908. And so he was in Kentucky, he moved west, he found people in Los Angeles that supported his dream, and they established a town site called Allensworth. And at that time, Allensworth was a place that didn't have anything going for it. It had the railroad that connected Southern California to San Francisco. And so when they acquired the land there, people began to come. And by 1908, 1910, it had become a flourishing community. It had a church, it had school, it had a public library, it had stores, a barbershop, a justice of the peace, a constable. It was a thriving community and had everything it needed, and it was doing it successfully well. Even so much that they were interested in making it Tuskegee Institute of the West. And as that happened and the success came, I mean, we're talking about a community of about 300 people. It was an educated community. And so with that being, there was a lot of opportunity that was going on. The railroad was there. People would be able to come to the community and sell their produce and all of the goods and stuff and get it on the railroad and get it out of town. But as things turn out to be for African Americans, and that is our plight throughout our history, it wasn't to be successful. So the next thing we knew, the railroad spur went to the white community that was west of Allensworth. The water was diverted away, and all of a sudden, Colonel Allensworth was killed by a motorcycle outside of Los Angeles. And that was the demise of the town site thereafter. And about 1925, it really took a complete nosedive because the person that gave the water, it never did happen. So moving forward, people stayed there. Many moved away looking for opportunities elsewhere. And by the 60s, late 60s, 70s, they were talking about demolishing the town. And an African-American that grew up there was a draftsman for the state of California Park and Recreation. And he came up with the idea of making that a state historic park. And so by 1976, it was a state historic park. And then my mom moves into the town in 79. And we asked her, why did you move here again? And she said she wanted to be a part of history. And at that time, Allensworth was still like half African-American, half Latinx. And everybody worked together. My mom was there, and people started saying, you know, the Lord sent you here. And my mom said, he didn't tell me that. But my mom continued to do what was on her heart to do, so much so that there was no church in the town at the time. And she said, everybody has their physical food, where's the spiritual food? So she decided to have worship services in her house. And my brother at the time was a minister, so he did the first worship services. And then she got support from the state park department to do activities in the park because it was dormant. Nothing was happening there. She got an agreement with the state park, and so they started doing. My mom started doing events, the annual rededication of the park, the all kinds of activities that you could think of. When you would go to the park, you would see thousands of people. I mean, not any grass that you could see, but just be a sea of people enjoying the festivities that my mom had organized. And those events are still held in the park today that she started. Allensworth State Historic Park was the first park that had the worship services. And then they said, well, we can't have worship services in the park anymore. So my mom did fish fries, sold fish dinners, and raised money to buy 2 acres of land. And she got the church moved into the community. And while she was there, she did everything in the community, providing food. She would go to meetings and say, what about Allensworth? You're giving out funding to all these other people. What about Allensworth? And so she continued to fight for Allensworth. She fought different type of activities trying to come into the community, slug treatment facility, turkey ranch. And her last biggest fight was the mega dairy, 17,000 cattle that were going to be coming into town. East of Highway 43, which would have destroyed the community. So my mom fought throughout her time, her 40 years in Allensworth, and we came to the town and we just decided we're going to continue to do what my mom was doing. And my twin brother, who was a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, 100 years later, decided, why isn't anything happening in this town? And the spiritual man that he is, he said, the Lord said to him, why don't you do something? So at that point, he took his own money, acquired 60 acres of land, and his desire was to further the dream of the colonel. And so now we're in a point to where we're doing sustainable regenerative agriculture in Allensworth. That process is underway where we've amended the soil. We've actually come up with different things for the soil, composting, composting machine, anything you can think of to revitalize the community. We've actually worked on doing arsenic remediation because we have natural occurring arsenic in our water. So we've been working with UC Berkeley to do those things. So over the years that we've been there since 2010, we've just used our energy, my husband, my sister, my twin brother, and members of the community to revitalize Allensworth and focus on the park as well, because how do you live in a community and then you have no relationship with the park, or the park has no relationship with you? So that's where we are, and really trying to make things happen. We have youth programs that we do in the community where we're educating our youth. It's leadership and environmental stewardship. So we're teaching them about the environment, climate change, contamination in the water. We actually gave them training last year on organic farming. So they actually designed their own farms and how much water, the crops, all of that. So they will help educate the people in the community as we move forward with addressing organic farming. And so I'll just kind of leave it there and let you take it.
Right. Everybody catch your breath. That was a lot. Miss Denise needs a nap. All right, Miss Felecia, let us know what you up to.
See if I can get this right.
It's on.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Felecia Gaston. I am the Executive Director of Performing Stars of a Marin. It is a nonprofit organization that I founded 32 years ago. This program serves children who live in the low-income communities in Marin County. We are based in Marin City. And what's most important about having this program is that it started with a zero budget. It started with a dream and an idea. It started with a passion of mine growing up in the South, Georgia, wanting to take ballet as a little girl. It wasn't available because of segregation. But throughout the years, I noticed that children who live in low-income communities, if they don't have the access and opportunities, and they have dreams, and sometimes they don't know what their dreams are, they need to have opportunities so they can see what they want to do. And so that's what Performing Stars is all about. It provides professional training for children in the arts. Over the years, we have served over 3,000 young people. We start them at age 5. We follow them until they get to be teenagers. We incorporate social skills and manners. And what's most important, the reason why I'm here tonight to tell the story about Marin City. When I first started working in Marin City, I happened to work for a family service agency, and that agency closed down. But one lady gave me a box of newspaper articles, and these articles were from the year 1942 to 1945. And she said, "You're going to do something with these articles." So because I'm a historian, I love to tell stories. Kept collecting newspaper articles. So for 32 years, I've been collecting all of these newspaper articles, and I had boxes and boxes and boxes. So each time I would get volunteers to come and work for my organization, I would have them cut and paste the articles. So over the years, we have all these articles, and about 4 years ago, I partnered with Dominican University, and they provided their interns to start helping us archive the articles. So now all of these newspaper articles are in binders, and they're categorized by the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and go on and on. But what's most important about this too is that when I started working in Marin City, I had a chance to meet a lot of the senior citizens, the pioneers, the people who came to work during the shipyard days. And I was fortunate to get their stories. I'm fortunate to be able to have their archives. I'm fortunate to have a lot of their memorabilia. I've been fortunate to be able to get their stories and tell it into a children's play. So my children in Performing Stars actually have told the story several times about how people came to work in Marincia. A lot of people don't know a lot about Marin City. A lot of times you just see the sign that says Sausalito Marin City. You see the tall buildings. You see the public housing. A lot of times people don't know that there are low income communities in Marin County, period. But Marin City has been there from 1942. And I'm very honored that this year Marin City is celebrating our 80-year celebration. Part of the celebration is that we're going to take all of these archives, we're going to display those at the Marin County Civic Center, and we're going to tell the story of the Black people, the struggles. I've been able to find articles about Marin City. There were meetings at the Civic Center with developers in 1943. Now, mind you, the war started in 1942. There were meetings with the developers about what are we going to do with the Black people when the war is over. There was so many attempts to move Black people out of Marin County, period. And people came to work in the shipyards. They were patriotic. They wanted to leave the Jim Crow South. They came to find a better life for themselves and their families. So many of the families that we're surviving 8 generations right now, many of these family members are still there. There were 20,000 Black people who worked in the shipyards, but after the war was over, mind you, Marin City was mixed when people came to work in the shipyard. So there was Chinese, there was white, there was Blacks. But when the war was over, Blacks were not able to purchase homes because of the redlining. But again, Marin City Blacks said, we're here to stay. We're not going back to the Jim Crow South. We want to make a better life for themselves, for their children, and they foresaw the future of their children too. I'm super excited about telling this story. We're having this big exhibit in August at the Marin County Civic Center. We're going to display all of these articles that I've been collecting for all of these years, and it's really going to tell the true history about Marin City And the title of a book that I'm working on, a commemorative book, is called We're Here to Stay. Because what's most important is that people are still fighting. Blacks are still fighting to this day. Throughout the years, there's been so many attempts from developers, like I mentioned, from 1943. There's been an NAACP active in Marin City. There's been a tenant council. There's so much fight that's still going on. But again, when you think about Marin County, you don't think that there has been a history of Blacks that have lived there. And so through this 80-year celebration, we're going to tell this story. We're going to show it through the exhibit. We're going to show it through the historical archives. We're also going to have a 3-man play. It's called James versus Marincia, because Marin City at the time, when the welders were working, the Boilermakers wanted all the Blacks to be in a separate auxiliary. And there were 2 people who really fought to make sure that there would not be a separate auxiliary. It was led by a welder named Joseph James. He was a performer. He came from New York, but he was determined that we're not going to have a separate auxiliary. So he solicited the help from Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall came and represented the Black workers, and it won a California Supreme Court case. So all of that is going to be shown in August of this year too. And then we're going to end with a 4-day weekend. Friday night before Labor Day, we're having a big reunion. Saturday, we're having a big car show. Sunday, we're doing a homecoming revival. And Monday, we're going to end with a blues, jazz, and soul party in the park. So that's pretty much a good story to tell about what's happening with Marin City.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Denise, I want to, my favorite part of your story is when you talk about your mom. And I think as we are talking about the power of Black women and how we are developing resources for the future, I'm always struck by the story of your mom and the decision that she made to move to Allensworth. And I just wish you would just take a minute and tell us about her and what she told you when you asked her, why are we here? And I just think about the time and her social location and what it must have been like for her. And I would love for you to share a little bit about your mom with us.
She was just a go-getter. She was very inspirational, worked with, it's off?
Sounds like it.
Okay.
You need some help. Here you go.
There you go. All right. She was a very inspirational person, and just really, if she saw something that needed to be done, she just did it. She would, her children were in Southern California, and if she had an event in the park, she would call all of us and said, "Oh, okay, I got a big event this weekend. I need all of you guys here." And we would just show up and help in any way we possibly could to make what she was doing successful. I mentioned the story about the fish fries, but my mom did all kinds of things. She was so much help into the community that when people got sick, even when people died, they didn't call 911. They would call my mom. She was that kind of person. And she represented Allensworth very well everywhere she went. She never stopped asking, what about Allensworth? And she was just very determined to make things happen. And while she said, the Lord didn't tell me that, she was certainly doing the Lord's work every step of the way. And, she opened up her house. There would be times when the county board of supervisors would make a decision to do something, and they would come into town, and she said, "Come over to my house for dinner." And she would fry that chicken. She would fry some fish and cook some greens and cornbread. And by the time they left, the decisions that they were going to make, they had a second thought about it. But, she was just very determined that where she was, she wanted to make a difference. And she did that throughout the 40 years that she served in Allensworth. And she was actually the honorary or unofficial mayor for Allensworth for all those years.
Did she ever tell you what she was doing? Like, did she have a way to articulate, like, I'm doing this because I'm trying to get here. I'm trying to get us here. What was she doing?
I don't know that she was trying to get us there, but she was trying to make things happen. If she saw something that needed to be done, she always said, "Well, I'm not just going to sit here.
That's
You guys just sit here, but
That's right.
I have something to do." And she would rally the community. She would rally us. She would rally whomever, all the churches, and by golly, before you knew it, she had a busload of people going to Sacramento to make sure that mega dairy didn't come down. She did. She knocked on doors. She did whatever she needed to do to make a difference, and quite successful. I mean, my mom didn't have a whole lot of education, but it didn't take education. It took the right spirit and the desire to want things better for a people, for the community where she lived, and she used all of her energy and all of her time to do that. And we often ask the question, "Don't you get tired?" She says, "Yeah, I get tired, but there's still much more to do." So I often say to myself, if my mom could do it, then I certainly am not going to stop doing it.
That's right. Thank you for sharing about her. Will you tell us her name, please, so we can hold it in our
Nettie
hearts?
Morrison.
Thank
Nettie
you.
Morrison. She was the one that made sure that Attorney General Jerry Brown at the time wrote the legislation and had Governor Schwarzenegger sign AB 1077 to make sure there was no mega dairy in Allensworth or near that town site.
Mm-hmm. And we thank her for that.
Yeah, surely.
So when I think about your story, Miss Felecia, I'm a artist, and I think a lot about storytelling and art practice and how we should be leveraging those things for social impact. And I'm fascinated by the fact that you built this humongous ecosystem based on your love and participation in the arts. And I would love for you to talk to us about why you felt like that was the right thing to do. Like, why did you choose art as your pathway for social impact?
Well, a lot has to do with, can you hear me?
Did you turn your mic off too? Hit the top. Is this thing on? No, it's not on.
Hi, everyone. There we go.
Okay, thank you. I actually grew up in a very rich home style with my grandmother, who started the first female gospel group in Marietta, Georgia, called the Sacred Hearts.
Whoa, what? That was your
So,
grandma?
That was my.
Shut
That
what?
was my. You know about that? Do you know?
You didn't tell me that on the phone, Miss Felecia. Okay. All right, carry on.
Yeah, my big mama. That's what. But she started the first female gospel group in Marietta, Georgia, and my mother was a part of the singing group. My aunt. And all I know is that my big mama would always have a lot of musicians that would come. Later, when I found out that when my mother passed and I was going through all of the papers, that my big mama was a gospel booking agent. And I found a contract that she had signed with Dorothy Lovecoat, and it was for $600 back in the 60s. So all I remember is that my big mama always worked, and she always had a garden, and she had fruit trees all around. She had pecan trees, she had fig trees, she had walnuts, peaches. So we grew up with a lot of vegetables. We were sustainable before they even call it organic sustainability, right? But more than that, she always had these musicians that would come every Sunday. And she would, again, you're right, cook that fried chicken. And there's something about cooking on the Sundays. But my mother also introduced me to a variety of music because my mother loved Nina Simone and Aretha Franklin. So I grew up with a lot of the arts, but I do remember, again, as a little girl, wanting to take ballet. And I remember going to visit my grandmother, and I was about 5 years old, and we would pass by this little school with a lot of little white girls taking ballet. And I would be looking out the window in my mother's car. And I wanted to do it, but I knew that you couldn't. Don't even ask, because of the way segregation was, right? And that really instilled me to what I'm doing today. And I always consider performing stars as being moving children from being spectators on the outside looking in to being participants on the inside looking out. So it's not about even giving a child a scholarship, it's giving them the opportunity to be on that stage. So if they can take ballet, who knows? They could be with the Dance Theater of Harlem. Who knows? I might be dancing with the Dance Theater of Harlem if I had that opportunity, because I really desired to take ballet. I finally did take it when I was in high school. But that's what made me really think about children these days. If they don't have that opportunity, and you have to give them the opportunity to be, not only to take the training, but they have to have all the social skills and the manners. So even when I started performing stars, I started with 8 kids taking ballet. And I remember the first time I took a lot of kids to the Marin Ballet, and I would be sitting in the lobby waiting for them to take their class. And some of the white ladies would say, "Are all those your children?" Because they just figured, you're Black, you're from Marin City, you got a lot of kids, but at least I just figured that I'm happy that they're here taking ballet. And since then, we've had so many success stories. We've had one young man who's at the Boston Ballet as a principal dancer. We've had one go on to Alonzo King's Lions Ballet Company. We've had some young people who's really gone on to be attorneys. They've been into business. It's not all about they not fulfill a dream of theirs, but we made sure that they felt confident, because a lot of times you just have to feel super confident about what you want to do. If you don't know what you want to do, but if you have the self-esteem, the pride, the discipline, and the confidence, and you know how to interact with people, that's how this whole vision came about.
I can't believe you kept that from me. I want to shift the focus of our conversation a little bit, because when I hear you, Denise, talk about Colonel Allensworth, Colonel, I always forget his name. It is Allensworth? Yes. I always feel like I did that wrong, because that's a town name, but it's his name too. That's gangster. I like it. It makes me think of Memphis. And it makes me think of the story of Robert Church, which I tell a lot of you know me at all. You have heard me talk about Robert Church. Robert Church was the first Black millionaire in America. And he also was the owner of the first Black-owned bank that had $1 million in assets. And he was like Ida B. Wells' patron. He was W.C. Handy's patron. He was the founder of Beale Street. Like, this guy, there's no Memphis without this man. And he was a former slave. He was a formerly enslaved person. There's a whole dramatic story I'll tell you after. And he built, he had a real estate empire. And based on his income and his empire as a real estate person, he built a thriving, middle-class, integrated professionals, artists, all community in South Memphis that was literally diabolically and intentionally destroyed by the white power structure. To fast forward today, where Memphis, the birthplace of the first Black millionaire, is now the poorest, most violent, most food insecure urban center in America, with 65% Black and 40% poverty rate, right? And so you have to think about what? Okay. So thinking about the trajectory of these communities where we're like, Black people are kicking it. Like, we got this, we're good, to no resources, no support, no respect, no safety, right? All of those things. And it makes me, in my work today, thinking about how do we recreate or create a new economic drivers for ourselves that create that sense of safety and abundance and love and belonging, right? And creativity and imagination, all of those things. And so I would love to hear you all both speak about your relationship to the economy of your towns and how you are really thinking through how we are shifting not only the culture of the economy, but the actual mechanics of the economy, so that the Black communities that you are supporting have a fair chance and have a leg up and have an opportunity to be able to build resilient communities that feel safe and all those.
Okay, well,
things.
I'll just go back briefly to what I said about my twin brother, and when he said, why doesn't somebody do something? And he took the initiative to acquire some land and said he wanted it to be the economic engine. So when you think about that, it's like, well, what are you going to do with that? But what he decided to do was do organic farming. He did his thesis on this project and raising rabbits. The rabbits will be the fertilizer for the land, and worms will help aerate the soil, and it will end up being a closed loop system. So that's and the grow alfalfa on the properties and so forth. And so with that in mind, and we started talking to the residents about this early on when the project came to the community, and everybody was interested, but it does take time. So my husband and I went and got the training and learned organic farming, but we were still doing other things in the community, trying to move things forward. And so about 2017, we had a Hamlet plan that was done, and that identified, the county did this, saying what the issues were they wanted to see in the community, and the residents prioritized some projects that they wanted to see happen. So once the community prioritized those projects, they said they wanted to see natural gas, they wanted to see water systems improve, they wanted to see sewer, they wanted to see have internet service, housing improve, several other things in the community. And as we looked at that, I realized, well, we're beginning to do some of these things. We did get money from the state water board to improve our water system. In fact, my husband went to Self-Help Enterprise and said, we have this propane that we're using in the community, and that's not really the safest way, and we should be looking at something better to do. And so we went to the PUC, and before we knew it, they got legislation passed. Before we knew it, we had a solar energy project that it was coming into Allensworth, and we were the pilot project. We also had our first sidewalks coming to Allensworth in 2019. Now you might say, really? But yes, really. The community had not had sidewalks. We had done a sewer study. All of those things coming together made me realize that we need to tell our own story and do our own community plan, because a lot of the things that the residents said they wanted to see happen, by God's grace, those things have begun to happen. And so let's put our own community update plan together, and we'll say in it what we want to see. And so that's how we got to the place where we are right now. And we've continued to move things forward, so much so that we have organizations and we have people that come to us, and how can we help? How can we help you with what you're doing in Allensworth? We've gotten funding to work with our youth. We've had the universities come forward to work with our youth. You heard me mention about the youth program. Well, we have a professor from USC that's going to come and work with our youth program this summer, and it's going to be an art camp. We didn't ask for that. She just said, I like what you guys are doing, and I have a program I think we should work on together. And so that's happening. But the point of all of this is it's important for the communities to not just be a community of not. We are a food desert community. If you come to Allensworth, to our state historic park, there's no place to eat. There's no place to get gas, to get water, anything. You have to travel 15 miles in any direction. So those are for the visitors to come to the park. And it also applies to the residents. So we see the position that we're in right now, that it has to change. And we know what Colonel Allensworth did in 1908, 1914, and the success of that town site. And Allensworth has been coined the town that refuses to die. And by golly, we're not going to let it die. We're trying to bring it back and revitalize it and make it even better than what it was then. And we have not given up. We don't know where money is coming from sometimes, but as we keep moving and making progress, and every opportunity that is before us, we don't sit on it, we do something about it. And that's gotten us to the place where we are right now, to where the funding is coming in, and from all directions, partners are willing to work with us. And because they see our vision and they see what we're trying to do for the good of the community. And it's not just for the good of the community, it's for the good of the region, because all that we have there with the the park. We have restored wetlands that's there. We've designed a trail to connect those two. We have our historic cemetery we've just acquired. We're surrounded by wildlife in our backyard. That's all our ecosystem, part of our ecotourism that combines with the visitors that we want coming into the park. And we have a great story to tell. And before too long, we're going to be the organic farming hub of Southwest Tulare County. I keep telling the supervisor that, but that's the direction that we're going, because we're actually getting ready to train people so they can come into Allensworth and acquire land and do the farming in the community.
So what I just heard you say that I want to make sure everybody else heard you say is that when Black communities thrive, all communities thrive. Y'all heard that? Okay. When Black communities thrive, all communities thrive. Okay.
Hi, thank you. Unfortunately, I would say about Marin City, because it is unincorporated, so it's always been under the control of the Marin County and the Board of Supervisors, even back since 1942. Imagine you have families who live in Marin County who are making incomes less than $50,000 a year. They are surrounded by so much wealth, financial wealth. However, when you think about Marin City, the wealth is into the stories, the history, the generations of the families. The fact that they've been fighting to survive, the fact that they've been fighting and they're still fighting to this day. I think the fact that Marin City, there's been talks of incorporating Marin City. However, I think that could be, it could backfire on the community, because there are so many people who are just waiting. It's like the sleeping giant on the hill. We're just waiting to incorporate so we can just really move all the Black people out. We can tear down all of the public housing. And so there's a beauty about Marin City still being, having the families that still live in public housing, even though the Black percentage numbers are really low. But we have to keep telling these stories. Like you said, if we keep showing that people are thriving and through history, and that's why I'm excited about this Marin City 80 celebration, because we're going to tell the story even up to the Board of Supervisors, what happened to the Blacks even back in 1943. The fact that they've been fighting, there are so many headlines of fighting. We're going to fight, we're going to fight, we're going to fight to survive. And people to this day, they're still fighting to survive, even with the public housing. Marin City's public housing was built in 1960. It was designed by the best architects in the whole United States. This housing authority, it won the best designed public housing in the whole United States. But in the last 15, 20 years, there's not been any work that's been done on the public housing. So the whole idea is to have deferred maintenance, so people will not be able to just sustain to be there, but people are still determined to be there because they can afford to be there. And so I would think that it's very important that we have to just keep telling the story. And we have to, if we don't tell our story, and no one else would know it. And I'm excited that I'm able to tell the story from the Black perspective. Even the play that we put together is called The Lost Stories of Marincia, the Black Experience. Many times you may even go to Sausalito, there's a Bay Model. They have a whole display about Marincia. Now imagine 20,000 Black people come to work. There's only like 20 photographs of Black people who worked in the shipyards. Marian Anderson performed at one of the launchings. Bill Bojangles Robinson performed at one of the launchings. I've asked some of the seniors, the pioneers before they passed away, and I asked them, when you look at all the photographs about Marin ship, and I'm like, I know you guys were there, you helped build 93 ships. She said, we were there, but the photographers didn't take the photos of them. So that's why it's important that we have their oral histories, we have their stories, And all of that is going to be displayed this year.
Thank you for doing that. So when I first started, I was telling y'all this is really a family reunion night. There's a lot of people in here who are part of our community that we want to be able to bring their voices in, if you don't mind, because I think it would be really valuable to hear from them. I think I want to start with you, Kat, if you don't mind. I think about you first because I wouldn't know either one of these women without you and the work that you've done with them over the years. And I'm so grateful to you to be a part of your community and to welcome you into mine. And I would just love to, I don't want to ask you a question because you always say the right thing. So I just would love for you to just talk to us about what is coming up for you and why it is that this work is so important to you.
I'm gonna come up here. Yep, got it. Right there. Thanks. Tatum knows. So I'm very honored to be here tonight with my sheroes and to really talk about my education about who should be leading the way. It's Black History Month, the last day. And we talk a lot, as we should, about Black leaders fighting oppression. But we don't talk enough about them leading the way to progress, because the communities hurt the first and worst have the best ideas about where we should go. Yes. And so I've had the privilege of getting to be in community in Marin City and Allensworth. I'm looking forward to going to Memphis.
Looking forward to having you.
Yeah, and I might just camp out for a while. And if you think about what we've heard tonight, it's very profound in terms of nation building brought to the community level. So we've lost our way. Every system on the planet, in the economy, in society, in government has failed us. And we're on the brink of no less than 4 or 5 catastrophes that compound on one another. And nobody has a plan except frontline communities, because they have always had to fight oppression. They've always been fugitives. And they have to work with their resources to get things done. So when you hear what Denise was talking about, it's a very sophisticated gambit. It is not getting subsidy to support a weak community. It's revealing the solutions of a powerful community that we all need. So there's arsenic in water all over California. Where is the solution coming from about how to remove it? From Allensworth. There are systematic oppressions that deprive us all of our ecological commons. Tulare Lake, the largest freshwater body west of the Mississippi, was drained by ag and other commercial interests, which of course impoverished Allensworth, but that is a problem for all of California. Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. It started there. The erosion of commercial bases. So Allensworth had developed its own commerce. It was connected to commerce through the railroad, but now it is in the forefront of regenerative, organic, agricultural basis of economy that has to be re-regionalized. It shouldn't be, as in east of Eden, shipped in refrigerated cars, iceberg lettuce from Salinas to New York. It should stay in the Central Valley. And the workforce too, that we have impoverished the entire Central Valley in a way that forced all the young people out of it. And there's no one left to build the new communities until bright, opportunistic, informed leadership says, no, this is the best place to live and work. Felecia. I met Felecia through our sons because I was not smart enough to meet her on my own. That was a long time ago. The arts, as Anasa knows well, is where our iconoclastic leaders express themselves. So when the rest of us are screwing everything up, the artists are telling us what we did wrong, where we need to go. So I fully support using the arts, not just as, what you might think of it as like youth leadership development, like community building. No, it's like finding our way out of this mess to something better. And it involves also retelling our history accurately, which we have not done in this country I have what on paper looks like the fanciest education, and I have had to unlearn almost everything I was taught. It was so badly, dishonestly told. So Marin City 80, Marin Ship 80, the 80 years of history that we need to reveal again is not alone in the West Coast. And Felecia and other Black leaders are on the verge of retelling all of Western history in this country from a Black perspective, because we have this fantasy that, oh, you know, we had peaceful Native Americans and Blacks came here for opportunity out of the Jim Crow. No, we were like a pretty murderous place out here, really bad. But the stories of resistance and revival from Black towns, Allensworth, Marincia, Port Chicago, Vanport, they're replete. Buffalo Soldier, they're replete. And somebody needs to tell us that history again so we don't repeat it, but also so we identify leadership where it is. It's always been here. We just haven't been listening. So I was supposed to say something about the Good Life Pledge. Chad's going to do a better job than I am. But anyway, recognizing all of this and trying out social enterprise, philanthropy, politics, policy, legislation, narrative, cultural strategy. I suddenly thought to myself, oh my God, no rich person in the world doesn't have assets. The problem is that the brightest, most promising leadership in this country doesn't have assets. They don't have wealth because it was taken from them through native land theft and genocide, through African slavery, Jim Crow and mass incarceration, through the persecution of immigrants and refugees, through the less than personhood of women and other non-conforming genders, through the despoliation of the ecological commons that belong to all of us. I don't care what you say about property rights, ecological commons belong to all of us. So how are we going to give it back? My partner, Tom Sire, and I were part of the Giving Pledge, which was sleeves off our vest because we're always going to give all our money away. Sorry, kids. But that's not enough. In fact, grant making just consolidates wealth and colonizes people in this country, as far as I can tell. So we decided to make up a pledge, which thankfully others joined in, called the Good Life Pledge, to give a third at least of our assets away during our lifetime to the communities from whom they were stolen, so they have a balance sheet. And I think of it in those financial terms, but it takes wealth to make wealth. You know. So anyway, that's what I was supposed to say. Can I sing a little song?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so how are you going to sing?
This is from Storm. You remember Storm?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here we are, floating around out in space. We're all looking for the final frontier, my dear. It's right in front of your face. Here we are. Why are we so afraid? We're afraid of ourselves and each other and the humongous mess that we've made. Here we are. Time and again, I'm at the end of my rope, and I feel life's joke that I've been playing with you. After all, we are all what we are about to be. And here we are. Here we are.
So next I want to ask one of my favorite people in the whole entire world, Taj James, to say something. And the reason why I want to talk to you next, Taj, is because the thing that Kat always reminds me of is the thing that I always say, which is like, I'm actually not looking for allies. This idea of like, I want to be a white ally, because that means that you think that this is my problem and you want to come and help me. But Kat knows that this is our problem, and she shows up like it's her problem. And I love that. It's my favorite thing about her. And I just got chills. I love you, Kat. And the reason why that makes me want to talk to you, Taj, is because Kat has decided how she's going to show up, and she fully embodies it as often as she can. And you have a really beautiful gift about talking about how we show up and how we embody our values and the things that we believe in at all times, even when it's super hard. And I would love for you to talk to us about that for a minute.
It's important to do what we're told. That's right. And it's important for us to remember how to really listen. Because as our sister Kat said, everything we need to hear has already been spoken. All the solutions we need are right in front of us. The question is, can we remember how to listen? And can we find that part in ourselves that's connected to everyone else? Because that's what we all want to remember, right? How we're connected, that we need each other, and that the only way to get out of this mess is together. And I think, again, as Sister Kat reminds us, to get out of this mess, we got to listen to the right people. We got to put new and different people in charge. And as we head into out of Black History Month and into Women's History Month, I have to say, it's time that we brothers step back, because for, I don't know, a while now, 5,000, 10,000 years or so, seems like we've kind of been making a mess of things. And what if we just sort of step back for maybe like 500 years or so? Because that might be how long it takes to sort out this mess. But but I'm just, grateful to the three of you, and the leadership that you bring, and the reminder that, if there's something to be done, let's just do it. And for many of us, that's just the first thing to do is just listen. a lot of listening, and just making sure that the folks who have the solutions have access to, as you said, the tools and the resources to bring those solutions to life. And I'm in the midst of a very difficult and painful moment in the world. The work that you all are doing is what gives me hope, is that whatever else is going on, I know that y'all wake up every morning and you just, do the work in the community, and you're just going to keep doing it no matter what. And we just got to make sure that you have what you need, because when you get what you need, we're all going to get what we need. When you get what you need, we're all going to get what we need. And if we can just understand that very basic reality, we're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. We're going to get through this. So, whew. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love y'all.
Thank you.
Chad. Now, the thing that made me think of you is Todd saying, if we get what we need, we're all going to be all right. And I know that that's something that you think about a lot, and have started to build your own personal practices around. Yeah, you have to come up here. You're going to get in trouble.
It was timing.
And it is hard. It's a hard thing. It's like completely countercultural what you're doing. It's completely against anything anybody ever told you to do. And I am curious if you could talk to us about your own transformation and how you step into this conversation as someone whose family has taken the Good Life Pledge, as someone who is thinking about how this is yours too, and what's amazing about it and what's hard about it and what you're thinking about right now.
Thinking about how going last after all these amazing pieces is really hard. So I have to make two just sort of fun observations. One is I recently got my nails done with my kid, and their favorite colors are black and pink. And I thought it was really cool for having pink sparkly nails, but no, it's just not as many things. Sorry. I'm moving. And I'm thinking of the quotes that I've heard that are really useful. One is, you should do as you're told, especially if a black woman tells you to do it. My partner's a black woman, so I know that very well.
Art man.
One of the first things you said was your dreams don't mean anything unless you actually manifest them and make them happen. And so I also just want to fully acknowledge in complete humility, like I'm a baby in this work. Like Kat is one of my inspirations for this. She's been doing it for so long, and I am learning constantly. And so this is I'll share my personal perspective.
That's
Strong opinions loosely held, but apply to me. So I've relaxed a little bit. So yeah, I mean, the quote that comes to mind for me that I refer back to a lot is the Aboriginal Australian quote that is, if you've come here to help me, then don't. Like, if you come here because our destinies are intertwined, then let's figure it out. That was a very bad paraphrasing, but so I think that's sort of like my mindset. As somebody who checks basically every privilege box there is. I didn't inherit money as like the one I don't, but basically every other one. It's I think back to an experience I had. I was actually at my kids' school. Like Beverly Tatum was talking there, who's awesome, and her metaphor of like the escalator is great. But this particular experience was, this was maybe like early teens when I was starting to figure out like, oh, shit's kind of messed up. I was there and I was like a naive white guy in the crowd. I was like, okay, so what should we do? Like, how do we help? And what she said was actually very unencouraging, because what she said was, well, if you're in line at Starbucks and there's like a black person there and like the person looks past them to you, then you should like say, oh no, they're next. And I was like, dude, that's it? Like that seems utterly insufficient, right? Seems like we need to do more than that. And so part of it is just an ongoing feeling of like everything feels insufficient. And so it's this constant nagging for me of like, okay, I don't think I ever want to be totally comfortable, but like I'm just constantly uncomfortable with whatever I'm doing is insufficient. So that's kind of a driver. And I think like it's let's see, how do I show, what was the prompt again? Reset me on my prompt.
I have a question for
Okay.
you, because we've talked a few times. The last time you were talking to me about thank you, your current ponderings around like what is enough mean?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So this is kind of a reaction to thinking about Giving Pledge and Good Life Pledge, which I love and is awesome. And but the thing I think about is like the 30% part and the 50% part for Giving Pledge and 30% for Good Life Pledge, because for me the question is, why are we budgeting what we're going to give away? And this is geared towards people that have lots of wealth privilege, and so there's a subset that I think this applies to. But if you have wealth privilege, like, why are you budgeting what you're giving away? We should be budgeting what we're keeping, and we should be thinking about like, what do we need? And this is like a Taj concept, but like, what do we need to actually thrive? Like, what do we need? And I'm not even gonna like think about like judging what you need. Like, you can define it for yourself. If you want to like own NBA teams and shit, fine, I don't care. But figure out what's enough. And then why are you keeping anything beyond that? Why isn't it 100% after that? Like, what's this 30%, 50% stuff? And I get it's to probably to get people on board, and that's kind of like a radical thing. But for me, the enoughness is, let's figure out like we need to thrive, and then like figure out how to like radically transfer all of those other assets to communities that will make good decisions that currently don't have assets that will, make the world better if they have the resources to do so. So that's the enoughness thing. It's just like figuring out what's enough and like give away the rest. That's personally what I'm trying to do, and encourage my, when you have partners, there's like negotiations, financial negotiations that happens there. But
Thank you.
yeah, cool. Thank you all for letting me join.
So I want to talk to one more person, but I'm not sure if he's here. Is Jahi here? I can't see. He's not here. Yes. Oh, Eldra's here. Ooh, Eldra, can I please ask you a question? Fantastic. Thank you for complying. So, let me tell you why I love Eldra so much. Because the work that we do every day is excruciating. We do it because we're compelled to, because we feel like it's our spiritual mandate, because our mamas and our grandmamas told us to do it. But it's hard. It's so hard. It's like so hard I could cry right now. And the thing that I bump into over and over and over and over again is while patriarchy and white supremacy and scarcity and all those things are always in the way, the thing that is in the way first is people's pain and people's inability to have hard conversations, people's inability to be vulnerable, people's inability to be like, I actually don't understand this and I think this is dumb, but I'm listening. And we often can't even get to the white supremacy or the patriarchy because people can't even show up as their full selves. This man made it his business to make sure that as many of us can show up as our full selves as possible, and that we feel safe enough to just wail in each other's arms until we can talk about the hard things that we need to get out of the way so that we can all thrive. And I just want to first thank you for your work. You're like one of my heroes. I don't think I've ever told you that, but you are. And you're coming to Memphis. And I wish you would talk to us about your work and why it's so important, like why it is the portal that you chose for our collective liberation.
First of all, I want to honor the Queen Mothers up here on the stage and make certain we don't move away from them. The work that I do is with an organization called Inside Circle. We are a part of the Good Life Pledge. And that work is important to me because that work saved my life. That work put me in position to be able to not just accept resources, but believe that I was worthy of resources.
That's right.
You can give me all of the resources in the world. You can give me access in these communities, access to all of the resources in the world. But if we don't believe we're worth it, it don't mean shit. And so the work at Inside Circle was born in a maximum security prison in Folsom, California, following a racial riot in which several people lost their lives. And what we figured out how to do, I said we because I was in prison. I was serving a life sentence. I did 24 years in the California prison system. Prior to doing 24 years in the California prison system, I did 4 years in what they used to call the California Youth Authority, children's prison. That ushered me into the prison system. It initiated me into how to survive, not just how to survive. We've used the word up here tonight, how to thrive in those systems. And what I learned in Folsom, what I learned in what we call now healing circles, is how to be in relationship with myself. It's impossible for me to be in authentic relationship with you, and with you until I'm in authentic relationship with myself. We can do this all day long. But if I'm not right in here, then there is no congruency. When I'm in proper relationship with myself, then what's coming from here is in alignment with everything else. Then I'm doing what I'm saying I'm going to do. And these women up here, these queen mothers up here, you've heard stories about their communities. And we heard about OG Mima and how she raised her and what she indoctrinated her into. There's a thing called empathy overload. These are mass surgeons up here that are doing work in these communities day in and day out. There is no day off. There is no time off. We ain't got time for that. We ain't got time for time off. I'll rest when they put me in the ground. And I need a place to go and be able to decompress so that I have the energy to get up and do what needs to be done. So that's how I am here to support first myself, so that I can really support these queen mothers and what it is that they're doing. And that's what Inside Circle brings to the Good Life Pledge. So thank you, Kat. Thank you, Taj. Thank you, Laura. And thank you, ladies.
Thank you. So y'all just met our family. We're really lucky. I have one more question for y'all, but I want to, what time is it? Yeah, I want to open it up for a couple minutes in case there's some questions from the audience. Hey, y'all look beautiful. Hi. Any questions? No pressure. If you don't have one, I always have questions, so don't feel pressure. But I want to just create space if it's needed. And I can't really. Kat, you have a question?
Will you talk about Claiborne Temple and the work of Memphis?
Oh, yeah, I will. What's useful to say? Because I could talk for 2 hours. So when I was talking earlier about this big project I took on in Memphis, it's the building is called, this is so funny, I'm like, which big project? The building is called Historic Claiborne Temple, and it was the headquarters of the sanitation worker strike of 1968. Which is the campaign that King had come to Memphis for when he was murdered about a half a mile down the road. And a lot of people think about Memphis, they think about Elvis, of course, but they also think about King's assassination, but they don't ever ask the question, what was he doing there? Well, what he was doing there was supporting a movement of sanitation workers who, I'll tell you the longer story later, but who had decided that they wanted to start a movement around their safety, their dignity, their wages. And it was fortuitous for Dr. King because he was at the point a year before he died on April 4th, 1967. He gave a speech at Abyssinian in New York. And the speech was called Beyond Vietnam. He was being called to speak out against the Vietnam War. And he started off talking about the Vietnam War and how it was, not what we should be doing for all the reasons that we all know now. And he ended by saying that this conversation we've been having about race is really important. But if we don't expand our work to multiracial work around race and class and militarism, then we're not going to ever get free. And he was going around like, hey, everybody, we're going to talk about class and wealth. And we're going to have all the people of all the colors in DC, Poor People's Campaign. We're going to have tents. It's going to be amazing. We're going to sit on that lawn and live there until people listen to us and that we can change the economy of this country. And Memphis was a place where he saw the work happening because all of his funders, his friends, his confidants, all his people were like, bro, you are tripping. You need to have a seat. You're messing our thing up. All of our donors are leaving. Our thing is, we talk about Black people. We don't talk about poor white people. We don't talk about Latinx people. We don't talk about indigenous people. We talk about Black people. Hush your fuss. And he was like, aha, but I see in Memphis, they're doing what I've been talking about. If I can go there and support them in this work, then I'll be able to show everybody what I'm talking about. And Memphis will be the exemplar for the Poor People's Campaign for the rest of the country. Now, the thing that's really fascinating to me is that in 2022, and what we've all been through together for the past 2 years, there is no greater display of the fact that if we think about race and class and militarism, that's the conversation that we need to be in right now. And so when I had the opportunity to purchase Historic Claiborne Temple, I felt like hell to be able to do it because the person who had bought it was a white man of wealth, an older, straight white Christian conservative Trump voting man. And he and I were like, well, if we can do it together, then there's some hope for America, but we couldn't do it together because he couldn't have the conversations with me. He wouldn't talk about power. He wouldn't talk about privilege. He wouldn't just talk to me about the things. And so he was like, forget it. We're going to sell this building to a developer. I'm done. And I was like, oh, the hell you are. I have these moments in my life where something comes over me and I'm like, that was one of those moments. And I busted my butt for 9 months and raised about $1.3 million and bought the building. And now I'm a developer. And But that wasn't the end of the story, because the thing that taught me was one lesson that I said earlier, like, you can have all these dreams and ideas. If you don't have the money, then they're just dreams and ideas. Like, I'm not trying to devalue dreams and ideas. I live off dreams and ideas, but we have to be able to generate the resources to manifest those into real life. And I have become, what do you call those people? A devotee of abundance. And like done the work that we just heard about, is like learning your value and your worth. Because when I figured out I had to raise $1 million, I didn't actually think I was allowed to. So I had to like go in and be like, no, I actually deserve to raise this money. I deserve to raise the whole 10 million that we need. And in fact, the people who live in this neighborhood whose grandfathers were sanitation workers, they actually deserve to be able to come in this building and claim this story as their own. And so that's the work that we're doing, right? And it's not just about the moment. It's not about the building. It's about the fact that the resources and the money that we're generating and raising for our communities actually belong to us already. Just because someone took something from you doesn't mean it's not yours. It's just not in your hands. And so really thinking about like reclaiming what belongs to us, so that everyone can thrive and be joyful and be free and happy, because we all deserve that, because we're all human and we're all born and we all live on this beautiful, wretched planet. Woo! Yeah. And because I was in a relationship with Kat and with Taj and with Laura and Tanim and some other people, I took it a little bit further, because I'm like, if I need resources, then probably everybody who I know wants to do stuff needs resources. And so we took our production company called The Big We, and we were like, well, we're going to have a foundation because we need financial infrastructure. And we need a place for people to say, oh, I trust this infrastructure. I trust these folks to put this money where it belongs. And so we have philanthropic infrastructure to where we can take as much money as we need to and give it to whoever we decide. And we decided to also have an investment infrastructure, because developers and entrepreneurs are deciding the future of our communities. And if those developers are not from our communities, they're making decisions about people's lives that they've never met, don't know, don't care about, don't love, don't know their grandmama, they don't know nothing. And so we decided that we would build this infrastructure. And that all happened because I moved to Memphis and started working at Claiborne Temple. So, women. As we close, we're closing in a few minutes. And we're in this traverse between Black History Month and Women's History Month. And I have decided that my family is a matriarchy. I've just decided to lean on the Black women in my family. I wonder what it means for you. That's not the right word, but I just want to understand why your experience as a Black woman has you showing up in the ways that you are, and what it means to you, like what you see, how you see yourself as a Black woman in all of this, both of y'all. And why are we so powerful?
Well, I'll say it this way. About 94, I developed a nonprofit, and it didn't go very far, but I gave it a name. And it was STRIDE. And it means, or stands for Strong Test, Right Identity, Destiny, Excellence.
Come on.
And so that's what I represent.
That's right.
Because if you don't believe in yourself, how are you going to reach it? How are you going to attain it? And so I don't like to speak in terms of if, but when. Since I'm a woman of faith, you speak those things as though they were, and they will come to pass. And so when I'm telling you, we're talking about developing a Center for Understanding in Allensworth, and it'd be a national monument, and we will get President Biden to establish it as such. And that Center for Understanding will include the indigenous population, the African-American population, the Asian population, the Latinx population, and tell their plight, the past, the present, and the future. I believe it's going to happen. I don't have a plan of it yet, but we did come up with a budget. but that's how I mean, and it's, if you get up every morning and you don't have a goal or something to work for, what's the point? So, I mean, this is volunteer work, but it's my heart. It's what I care about. It's where I live. It's the people that I care about. And so I'm going to put all of my effort into making it real.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And for me, I'm feeling the song from the Lion King. They live in you, they live in me. I think about my roots growing up in Georgia. I think about, I just came back from my aunt's funeral in Winston, Georgia, and just being in the country and just being with that red clay dirt and just being around all my family members. And I think about how she made sure that I kept all the history on my grandfather's side. My mother made sure I kept the history on my father's side. And so I am a culture keeper. I am a historian. I believe in keeping these stories alive, not only just from my own community, but from within myself. So again, growing up with my big mama and my aunts and all the women mentors who have been so important in my life. As a matter of fact, about 5 years ago, I started a program within Performing Stars called Enlighten, which means that young women exploring their futures. And I brought together over 100 professional women because these women had mentored me all the time that I started Performing Stars. But I thought about all the people before then. And I introduced them to young girls, teenage girls, because if we don't show them what it means to have mentorships, we have to keep this spirit alive. We have to always continue working with our youth, whether they start at age 5 and moving on up. And my greatest joy is to see so many success stories of the young people. So when we talk about the wealth in my community, the wealth is because a young person in the audience right now, Jeanette Inkeloff. Stand up, Jeanette. She's one of my original Performing Stars. She's a professional videographer now. She gives back to the community, but there's people like Jeanette and so many of the 3,000 of the young people that we serve that they've gone on to be successful. And that's what gives me the most joy, that knowing that the work that I have done with the children in Performing Stars, that they have moved on to some successful careers.
I love it. Thank you. So, how many people in the audience have met any of us before? Welcome to our family. We love you and we welcome you. I want to initiate you into the community by having these women tell you what they need, because we show up for each other when you're part of this community. So I would love to hear what you need from us so that we can show up for you.
Well, I would like to see you come to Allensworth.
Yeah.
Come to the State Historic Park. Actually, the state park draws about 70,000 people a year. It could be much, much more, and that's our goal, to make it a tourist attraction. So come to visit, and when you come to visit, what you will see is, as you look around the park, you'll say, I've been to other historical parks, and it has a lot more going on than this one. Why? So if you see that, then what can you do about making that? Because Allensworth had a rich history. It was a Black Wall Street before the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was taken down because of hate. And it was going all across the country during that same period of time to eliminate communities like this. But come to Allensworth. And when you come and you see, then think about what you could do to make a difference. Maybe you can volunteer your time. you know, bring some kids that can help make a difference, not just to the park, come to the community, hear the stories and the plans that we have and things that we're doing in the community right now to make a difference. So that park will have a place to thrive, and so will the community. They're connected as one. And if you see that, then look for an opportunity to fund it. And if you have a desire to fund it, and if you've heard our story, right now we've submitted a proposal to the California Legislative Black Caucus to fund all of the projects that I've mentioned. We would encourage you, if you so desire, and we hope that we haven't sat here and talked for naught, that you would have a desire to support, do support letters for us, to help make our dreams come true. So when you come to visit the park, you will be inspired by what you see, and that you had a hand in making a difference, and making a difference in the history of all of us. Because my last comment is that there's no color, it's culture. We all have a culture. And if we learn each other's culture, there's an appreciation and respect that we have for one another. It's not a color thing, it's a human race thing. So I would just encourage all of you, whatever you can do, it's on your heart, make a difference. If it's not in Allensworth, do something for a child. There's always a need somewhere. But when you do this, it's like, I don't care about that. But you're touching, or you're missing an opportunity to help a fellow brother or sister. And it's a culture thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I would just say that I would encourage each of you to go to our website, performingstars.org, and you can see all the different activities and the programs that we provide. As Denise said, donations always help. We always are, as a nonprofit, we always are seeking donations, but it does help to have your support if you live in the area. We have all types of activities that happen throughout the year. We give away, support our communities during Thanksgiving, during Christmas, but even just the after-school programs, just to keep our organization and our children thriving. But also check out our website, Marin City 80. And please, we want you to attend our upcoming events that's going to be happening in August. We want you to come to the Marin County Civic Center to see the big exhibit. We want you to come and enjoy that 4-day weekend over the Labor Day holiday. And again, as Denise said, you know, supporting all the different programs. But we also are interested in volunteers. We want you to come to Marin City. A lot of times people, again, you may not think about Marin City as a place to visit, but you can come to our organization. My organization is located right in public housing. It's been located there. It's in a 3-bedroom unit. It's right in the heart of the community. But what I love about it is that we're really connected to the community, the residents, and any of your support would just be really appreciated. Thank you.
Right on. I've been sitting here thinking, like, what do I want from you? and I can't decide because there's so many things. And, you know, I could be really like basic and be like, well, I'm trying to raise $2 million. If you have $2 million, holler at me in the back. But what would actually be more powerful? I'll be like, everyone go get a therapist. That would be super helpful. But what I really want is for us to learn how to tell and hear the truth with grace and love. Because so much of what's in our way is that we can't look at what's true. It's just really hard because this is, I have a friend who used to say to me all the time, the history of the world is violent. And it is, and the history of this country is particularly violent, especially for people who have my ancestry. And us not being able to have that conversation in a meaningful and honest and tender way is really in the way of our healing and our becoming a family, you know? And so it makes us act out of ourselves, act out of our humanity, act out of our love. And even in my experience in life, when I have had to go through hard things, when I resist the hard thing, it gets harder. But when I open up and I welcome the pain and I welcome the truth and I welcome the like anguish that has to happen, on the other side, there's like this freedom and this breath that I have never experienced before. And I just want to ask you to lean into your humanity and learn how to love like in a real way, like accountability and truth and pain and all those things, like that kind of love. Like that's what I really want from you, if you don't mind. Tatum. Thank y'all for listening to us talk for so long. Appreciate you.
It's not working. All right, so I want to say thank you so much. I want to start with thank yous. So thank you to the Women's Foundation of California who helped us kind of support tonight's event. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Chad, Elder, Denise, Felecia, Anasa, and did I miss anybody? Taj, sorry, I'm looking at you right there. I also want to thank the women of the Battery, specifically Letty and Kristen, and Stacy's not here, and then all of you for coming. But anybody who knows me, I am a student always, so I have to give you some takeaways just in case. There was a lot of information. She's laughing. And by the way, Anasa and I, full disclaimer, we work together. And so we had a moment of that pain and conversation right before. So we actually put that in practice today. And on the other side of it, it actually beautiful. So anyway, so here's what I want. Yeah, so this is what I want you to remember about tonight. So number one, when Black communities thrive, all communities thrive. We got that? Number two, how do you even build wealth when you're still trying to gain access to the basics? So Sideworks in 2019, that's insane. Communities who hurt first and the worst always know which way to go. Kat. Need to put new and different people in charge. That's Taj. That's Kat. Through Taj. So Kat Taj. Folks who need a solution need to have access to the tools and resources needed to do the work. We are all a part of that. Don't let your circumstances dictate your future path. Got that from you earlier. Also, there's no color, it's culture. I'm telling you right now, I'm putting that on a t-shirt because that right there, that hit me hard. And we don't have time to take time off, Elder, that's you. And it's time to reclaim our communities, that what belongs to us, and it's not if, but when. So one of the things I forgot to do that Letty actually did in the beginning is that I talked about the objective for this evening from a perspective. We always want you to come away wondering, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that, or that's interesting, or let me go Google that, or maybe I should have a conversation. So the challenge we have for you is that we want you to find one person. One person, why would happen? What's behind me?
I just thought of something I need.
What do you need?
No, I'll tell you later.
Do you need it from me?
No, I need it from anyone who'll give it to me.
Okay, anybody find Anasa in the back of the room after this? I want you to go away and think about one of the things that I just said to you today, something that someone said on this panel, and I want you to go have a conversation with someone else and say, did you know? Guess what I learned? This is what I heard, because we want you to be changed and transformed in some way so that you show up in the world in a different way. And I'm hoping that tonight's conversation gives you something. So with that being said, thank you so much for your patience, for your contribution, for your participation. Do you want to say anything? No. You're good? Okay. Well, everybody have a great evening. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who are watching on live stream. We really, really appreciate you. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Same thing.